Are you addicted to your screen?
Does all this technology give us a short attention span?
Is children's programming to blame for screen addiction?
Well, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and love it if you like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down there too. That really helps the algorithm. And as we always say, keep the conversation going. So, yeah.
Well, I'm Casey Rochford, and we write some music at the end of the episode, so hang around until the end, and then you'll hear it. Yeah. Well, we don't write jingles, clearly.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully it's not like that.
Yes, the music is much better than that, and you'll definitely enjoy it. So, what shall we talk about tonight?
Well, both of us kind of
had... morning for you.
yeah, exactly. Well, both of us kind of had like similar thoughts here, and I thought, well, you know, this is a discussion that's ongoing all over the place, and it just made me think about a couple of friends that I've had, several different couples who got so into video games that I think it actually destroyed their partnership or marriage or whatever. Like, basically they'd play to the exclusion of everything else. Mm-hmm. And well, of course, you know what that would do. It's kind of like you're not present, even though they may be playing together, like, you know, different computers or something, playing together on the same server or something. They're not like really present with each other.
That's kind of weird. Like I've heard tons and tons of stories about one person in a relationship being, you know, glued to the TV or the video game or the cell phone or whatever. Mm-hmm. But both of them, like, you know, I remember, like, you and I used to go to that one game store and like play until the sun came up. Yeah, and that was just, you know, in the same room and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like a cool, fun bonding thing. But I suppose if you did that day in and day out, all day long, and started neglecting not only each other but like things around the house or
kids,
friends, and family and kids. Yeah, like. Oof. Yeah, it could be messy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and people get so involved they neglect their hygiene, or they don't really eat very well, just kind of snacking on Cheetos or something, and of course you're just sitting there, so it's kind of a sedentary sort of thing. So it's definitely not good for your health.
Yeah,
I mean, I love games,
eye problems, like
for
shortened attention spans.
Yep. I love games as much as anyone else, but like I'm not really, like, a lot of friends are like, oh, you got to play EverQuest or World of Warcraft or this like Star Trek Online or something. I'm like, I don't want to like get sucked into that. I like games that I can, you know, kind of, games I can just pick up and walk away from, where there's not like kind of, the game isn't built around you staying there all the time and grinding or something and that kind of thing, but where you can just, you know, like I played Doom and stuff. Like, okay, I could play Doom a little bit, save it, walk away, go do the things I need to do, come back whenever, or not even save it. I mean, how many times have I beaten Doom and Doom 2 and stuff? Jesus, there's no point in saving. But that's the kind of thing. That's if I do games, it's something like that where it's quick and, you know, I don't know. There's something about those kinds of online games, like World of Warcraft type stuff that really draw people in. And I've known, well, like you were saying, that the one person in a relationship doing that, I've seen that too.
Yeah.
And it really is destructive.
Yeah, I have played a lot of video games in my youth, and totally understand like the appeal and the draw to get sucked into the story and everything. And it's all interactive. It's in a way, it's like a lot more mentally engaging than just watching TV, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah,
but it is also like you're really checked out, you know. Whether
moderation,
it's a video game or virtual reality, you know, whatever it is, like, you know, I mean, it is an addiction of sorts, right? Like, I mean, we've talked about like the DSM in a recent episode, and how silly that is and how harmful it might be. But I mean, there are actually like problematic compulsions and addictions and things in this world, and that can happen with anything.
True.
So it's not like we should be vilifying cell phones or video games or whatever, but more like trying to figure out how to find that happy balance, you know.
Sure. Well, now here's the thing. You said cell phones, like screen addiction is a thing. And you know, one of the problems, like, it's so if you're just using your phone and reading the news, right? You're scrolling through like a news, you know, I don't know, news feed or something. That's one thing. You know, you read a couple of articles and find out what's going on. Most people just pick it up. They do that in the morning or whatever, and that's it. But the problem, I think, comes when you have companies like Facebook and TikTok and Twitter, or X, I guess now, where they craft the algorithm specifically to keep you there. Like, it is designed to like pull you in and keep you there as long as possible, because they have, you know, peppered in there's ads and things and stuff like that. So that's how they fund their operation. So it makes sense. If you can just jump on there and look at like a couple comments and walk away, well, hey, then they're less likely to get that ad revenue. So this is not like a hypothetical thing. This is an actual thing. Their algorithm is actually designed to get you to stay as much as possible. And I mean, I know this because I have friends who like spend all the time constantly flipping through stuff, you know, like all the time. Hours and hours of just flipping through TikTok or flipping through Facebook stuff or whatever, that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know that that's good. I mean, it's especially not good because it does kind of become this compulsion. Maybe even almost kind of like a security blanket or something, where it gives you that little dopamine and kind of like if you're feeling nervous or depressed or something, then you can like use that to sort of counteract that. But people do it also in social situations where you're in a group of people, like a group of friends or whatever, and people are just flipping through. Like, we've had friends like that like you're in a big group of people and they're just sitting on their phone and then they show you some funny thing, just one thing after another. Look at this funny thing, look at that funny thing. It's like, can we just have a conversation? You know?
Right.
Like, it would be like, I guess in the olden days, before there was like internet on phones, imagine we're at Sherry's and we're having some kind of conversation and there's one of our friends sitting there with like a Calvin and Hobbes book, like just focused on the Calvin and Hobbes book, and then randomly interrupts what's going on and says, hey, you got to read this. This is a funny comic right here. And, you know, it's like, you're not really engaged with the group at that point.
No, it's definitely like a security blanket sort of thing. And I suppose that could be a positive.
It could be.
People on the spectrum, you know, it gives them something to tether to.
Yeah.
You know, to get through like social situations that normally they might not be able to. You know, like I knew a girl that in college, she would sit in the very back of the class and draw the whole time because she couldn't pay attention if she was just watching someone talk. Like, she had to be fidgeting basically.
That makes sense. I suppose that's kind of
Yeah,
and
it's sort of
similar.
the same thing.
I guess it's similar to like, if you're working on some kind of cerebral thing, sometimes it's good to listen to music,
right,
to help, or especially if you're doing a repetitive task.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's whole YouTube videos, like hours-long YouTube videos that are just for things like that, like study music or work music or whatever, like programming, coding. There's whole 2 hours of music for coding. And stuff.
Yeah, Altair, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Great music for that. Yep.
Yeah, I personally I'm sometimes sucked in to just scrolling through Facebook because there's nothing else to do or whatever, and it honestly bores the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's if other people that are constantly in their phone are also bored but feel like they can't get away or something.
That might. That's
because honestly, having grown up in the generation that we do remember a time when you would have to fill your time with other things to do than
you'd have
screens, right?
You'd have to get creative.
Mm-hmm. Of course we had video games and stuff. We're
True.
Not like the generation before us, for instance.
Mm-hmm. But we were still kind of in that similar mindset of, especially when we're really young, there weren't a whole lot of options for distraction, electronic distraction. And for me in particular, because I got a couple of years on you there.
Well, I didn't have cable TV until I was in high school, even though lots of people had kind of were born with that in my age, and we just never had it. I think it was too expensive or something, whatever it was. So even TV was a little dull sometimes.
Mm-hmm. You had to pick your times because it's there most of the time in the middle of the day it's all soap operas and stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, and I too have the same sort of thing about stuff like Facebook and whatnot. It is really boring, and you know why? Because it's all memes and people's posting stuff from these stupid, silly games like what, character from Star Wars are you or something or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even the games too. That's one thing. Since I enabled ads on YouTube just as an experiment, I've actually been kind of studying the ads too to kind of see. I've got some potential conclusions about a few things, but I have noticed one thing. They do advertise games, but there's these kind of brainless, just clicking games. There's a ton of them all over the place where it's just you're not really Sim City, right? You had to think and you had to plan and you'd respond to these events that would happen and you'd have to do this stuff and that kind of thing. And it was a very creative game, but a lot of games, it was great. But a lot of games that you find, especially on phones, are just tap these things and just wait for something and keep tapping. And it's very brainless, which I suppose, I guess if you're just you're sitting in an office waiting for an appointment or something for 15 minutes, I guess then that's perfect for that. But I think throughout the day, if you're trying to get work done and you constantly are getting drawn back to these kind of mindless games, or social media, I think I guess it goes back to the screen addiction in games and stuff. And I think it's fine. All these things, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things other than the fact that a lot of these are crafted to trap you. But that aside, it's not bad to play video games or scroll through social media. But what is bad is when it comes at the cost of your real social life. That you spend more time away from people than engaging people and stuff like that. I think that...
Yeah. As a step-parent of a teenager, I can attest to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that also... That brings up another point. I've known people who had kids, and they, rather than actually... Because when I was a kid, my parents would, I'd be left alone a lot to just play with my Legos or whatever, and electronics kits or stuff. But like, we did stuff. We went and we did things. My mom, we would do craft things together, and we'd go out and go to places all the time, and do family stuff together. But I've seen parents who don't do that hardly at all, and what they do is they just hand their kid a tablet, and that's it. Probably because it distracts them, and that's okay. Now I can go do the things I want to do while the kid is just laying there looking at videos or something like that. But I don't think that's healthy. I think that breeds kids with problems.
I don't think you're alone in that opinion at all. That's it seems to be kind of the majority stance on that, from what I can tell. Is that there is definitely like a problem. Like it wouldn't be a thing, right, if you could take it away without some kind of drama, right?
Yeah.
But if you try to remove that element from the child, all of a sudden there will be hell.
Especially if your only method of interacting with the kid or entertaining the kid is that tablet, right? Mm-hmm. They've never been taught how to entertain themselves, or you don't have any things that they can play with without this tablet. I think that if you do that for years and years and years during critical development stages in a child's life, I think the impact would be extremely negative when they're getting towards adulthood or their teenage years, where they don't really have, all they know is the tablet.
I'm betting the dependency on things like that in youth comes a lot from the fact that you can find everything you need there.
Yeah.
Like they build it so you have no reason to leave. Like when we wanted to learn something, we would actually have to get off our ass, go outside, walk to the library, hunt down the book we want, hope that it's not checked out.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Then check it out, walk home and read it. Or read it at the library or whatever,
Exactly.
Like there was a significant effort and clearer heads, I think. Mm-hmm. Like I notice, and of course some of this is age and going through cancer and stuff, but my ability to retain knowledge was far superior when that was the only method of like gaining information, basically.
Yeah. Well,
was analog, let's say.
You're right. Well, because in order to actually do things, you had to remember it. And nowadays, it's like, oh, you've got the internet right in your hand, and you could just ask the internet. And so I think your brain, it slowly gets conditioned to not remember, because why? You don't need to, right? You're perfectly capable of functioning without remembering. And I don't think that's good. It's like anytime I'm around people and they're trying to remember something, right? Everybody always wants to go straight to the phone, like, oh, I'm going to look it up. And I'm like, no. Let's try to remember, because otherwise it's going to kill that like memory retrieval process that we have. Yeah. Because it's like when you reinforce those kinds of pathways in your brain, like the processes of, oh yeah, here's how you dig up an old memory, right? It keeps it fresh. Whereas if you never use that, then your brain just kind of forgets how to do it, which means you're going to forget more and more and more stuff.
Spot on. That's exactly how the brain works. And the other problem with like going straight to the phone is that they kind of pepper the top of the search results with things that aren't necessarily the best information. So you're just like, ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah,
ooh, piece of candy.
Exactly. Well, you
don't have to do the work, because like what you want is right there in front of you, and you're like, oh yeah, no need to look any further.
Exactly. Yeah. So why would you need to retain that? And I think the exercise of physically going out and getting the information you need, or in my case with like learning electronics or programming, was actually experimenting with it, like figuring out the answer myself. Because like, you know, when I first started programming, there wasn't the internet. I mean, there were bulletin board systems, but like you couldn't really just look something up. And even now you have Chat GPT and similar systems that can like write code for you. So instead of even having to know how to code, now you can just ask the system and it can create something for you, which I think is harmful. I mean, it's a useful tool, but I think it also kind of takes away from things that make us who we are. I think.
What is that? I'm trying to remember this phrase. See, I have trouble remembering things now.
Yeah, well, we'll just look it up.
like when there's a solar flare and then all the electronics are dead or whatever.
Like an EMP.
EMP, yeah. Like, let's go drastic here. Do you think it would be worthwhile to just create an EMP and just wipe out all the technology?
I don't think so, but here's the thing. I think that nowadays, because there were huge solar flares, which, by the way, are a little different than an EMP, but kind of have similar effects. But like in the 1800s, there was a massive solar flare that hit the Earth, and like all the telegraph lines started glowing and operating. The telegraph system operated on its own, just going haywire and everything. But it really didn't do much because that was pretty much the only thing that was really affected, other than people seeing the aurora like at the equator or something. But today, I think humanity is so dependent on this technology that if it got shut down somehow, say there was a huge solar flare or there was an EMP or something, society would collapse, or at least at the very least turn into some kind of chaotic mess for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're far gone enough that it would totally go haywire.
But it would certainly be a mess for a while. For a short while.
I mean, there's enough of us around that remember how to get by nowadays that we could be like, okay, this is what we prepared for as kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We actually don't have a calculator in our pocket. You know,
got to do all your math with slide rules and longhand writing and stuff like that.
I mean, like,
but those things are kind of going away too. Like if we have a couple more generations pass and no one will know how to do that stuff. Yeah. People don't know how to read an analog clock anymore. That's kind of a wild thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm even like kind of forgetting how to write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part of that is because I wrote in all caps ever since high school, and now that I'm learning German, there's a lot of capitalization that's actually kind of important, like throughout the sentence, whereas English just capitalizes the first letter and, you know, like proper names. But every noun is capitalized. Oh. So there are some words that could be a verb or it could be a noun.
That makes sense.
So now I'm like trying to remember how to write not in all caps. For a short time, I tried to make them like drastically more caps, but like,
I think that's hard for other people, you know, to read at that point. Yeah, I mean, I have these little LCD tablet things all over the place, and I use them, and I find that it's much easier to keep track of things handwriting. Like I write out tasks that I want to do or things like that. So I've kind of maintained that, although a lot of times now I don't really have to write in any kind of form that needs to be presentable, so my writing is a little sloppy.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, back in the past, I'd be writing something and it has to be legible for other people. I wanted it to look nice, and even writing in all caps, you can make some really nice looking writing.
Yeah.
So, and you're right. I think that's slowly disappearing. We're getting to the point where people aren't going to be writing things at all. In fact, It's like even text messaging is kind of changing in some way to be truncated, simplified. People don't really speak formally through text. Even like people having professional conversations through text tend to you substitute the letter U for the word you or things like that, and not punctuate. That always, I can't, like, I'm so conditioned to use punctuation and things like that I cannot, like, I know a lot of people do that. They'll send a statement through a text and not put a period at the end of the sentence or even a question mark. It physically makes me feel sick.
You have to have a question mark. I mean, sometimes I do, drop the period, especially if it's like all of a sudden that would turn it into like the bigger message or whatever, like the one that gets split and all that. And that's not really a thing anymore. Yeah, I mean, like the question mark is super important. Changes the whole flow.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
People that use no punctuation, that's so like, I can't even.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. Oh man. Well, I mean, let's go back to like I don't know if we have any more thoughts to discuss about like the screen addiction or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, with, short of like an EMP, what kind of fix do you think there could be, without going so drastic as just getting rid of all technology?
I think it might end up happening on its own, because here's some interesting thing, a couple things I've some anecdotal evidence that I've noticed that a lot of kids now, instead of listening to streaming music and stuff, and I'm talking like teenagers and younger, they'll go buy vinyl. Like vinyl is bigger than it ever was right now. And that it's that whole physically searching for a thing and having a tangible thing that you're listening to. And something I've heard too is that the generation, what would it be? Gen Z, I think. Yeah. They're now not shopping online and more shopping in stores. Like malls are actually getting a comeback because of this other generation wanting to go into stores and physically look through things more and more. Like it's a trend that's gaining some momentum.
I don't blame them, because not because I'm old school, but because so much of the stuff you buy online is just shit.
Yes.
Or you end up getting the wrong thing because you can't like hold it, turn it around, look at it, compare it to something else.
Clothes, especially.
Yeah. God. Yeah. The whole online shopping experience, like, actually, yeah, like that's kind of tied in too, because that's a very, gotta have it now sort of mentality that developed.
Yeah.
Much like the screen addiction. And yeah, I'm glad to see that kind of going away, because it's, that's really important for the economy too, because you have to be a big business to play with the big boys online.
Yeah, to compete, you can't. Yeah. To compete with the likes of Amazon and AliExpress and eBay and stuff, you either gotta, you gotta be a big company that can afford to, buy bulk, or you have to have some kind of a feature to your business that they don't have online, that kind of thing, some kind of hook, I guess, or a thing that you do differently that makes the experience so much better at your little shop than it does online.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing too that's kind of a good trend, I think, in that going to malls is a social experience. You're around other people, you're communicating. Like even if you just walk in and you talk to a cashier as you're purchasing something, that's a little bit of engagement. But a lot of times people go in a group, like some friends from school or whatever. They all meet up at the mall and you walk around the mall, you hang out and goof around and you go buy some stuff or whatever, or even just looking at stuff and not buying it. And that, I think, could reverse that sort of trend where people are being like almost isolated socially. Because yeah, sure, you got your friends on Facebook or whatever, but it's not, you're really disconnected, even though you seem to be connected.
Yeah, that one's a struggle for me, because like it is still connection. Like, you know, I suppose some reason that I tend to be drawn to Facebook right now is I live in Germany, and you know,
that makes sense.
Haven't really, like, I mean, the language barrier and, you know, not having a job yet makes it kind of hard to meet people. So,
well, and and maintaining your friendships when you were here was easier because theoretically you could have an opportunity to get together with many friends. Whereas, you're separated by a whole ocean and a bunch of distance. You can't really do that. So in that regard, Facebook's great because it at least allows you to sort of keep that connection going a little bit. But my point, I guess, is like in general, when you're on something like Facebook, you're not really engaging with people. Even if you have a conversation, it's not the same as face to face. You can't pick up body language. It's you don't get that kind of organic conversation that you would have in person.
Yeah, and I think people still understand that there is a whole lot of value to in-person communication and social interaction, because you know, like, even when you talk to somebody every day online, so you have this friend, you talk every day online, when you see them in person, you're still like excited to see them, you know, like, oh, hey, now it's real, you know. Like, you know, like there's still, I mean, to some degree, of course, it's like, oh, you know, remember what we talked about yesterday or whatever. But like, in the same regards, you know, it could be years since you've seen each other, and it's like a special thing.
Exactly, and having that online link, I suppose, keeps that connection at least somewhat there. Like, you may not know every little thing that's going on or whatever, but at least you know some of the stuff, and you've, you know, like, oh yeah, I saw you posted about you had a kid or something like that. That you would at least know that, or you'd know not to ask about one of their parents because they just passed away or something, that kind of thing. That would obviously avoid uncomfortable aspects of conversation. Like, oh, how's your mom? Well, she's dead. Oh, sorry. You know.
Now, if you do that, they're like, oh, so you unfollowed me on Facebook.
Actually, that's something interesting too, that like Facebook's really bad about, like, because people, if you have a bunch of friends, man, my chair. If you have a bunch of friends and they're posting stuff, like, you may not always catch everything that they've posted. Maybe you get a post that they post, like their dinner, but you see that one, but you don't see the one where they say, oh yeah, my grandma passed away, or I lost my cat or something, you know, that kind of thing. So I've noticed that, like, if you post like two things back to back, people won't see both. Yep. And some people may see one and some people may see the other, but not. It's kind of, I miss MySpace. How many times have I said that? MySpace was great. That was an awesome place. Man. It's just, TikTok to me, I think, is one of the worst offenders, because at least, like, so Facebook, there's a lot of memes and there's a lot of just stupid things, but people do post actual thoughts and have actual conversations. Whereas TikTok, it's very much geared to keep you scrolling, like short little videos that just keep on coming, one after another. And it's the same thing with with YouTube with their shorts.
Yeah,
it's just they're all these short little videos, and there's just a whole never-ending stream of them.
there's nothing of substance that you can possibly cram into 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah,
like nothing. Like you're challenged to even come up with anything entertaining. Like I don't understand that.
I don't either, and that's something where that's why I'm saying TikTok is the worst, because it's generally all very short videos. That's the whole bulk of TikTok is really short videos. Maybe they get up to a couple of minutes long or something, but that's it. Whereas in YouTube,
anti-kitchen sink, basically.
It is, yeah. Whereas if you go and you look at, like, say I go to the homepage of YouTube that has my recommendations, I'll see videos. It'll recommend some shorts, so I could click on those. But you'll see videos that are 3 minutes long. You'll see videos that are 20 minutes long, and then there's like hours long videos, all kinds of different videos. And that's good, I think, because, you know, like, I don't know, like, I love history and science stuff, and I watch a lot of that on YouTube. And there's no way you could have quality history or science content on TikTok. You might be able to barely touch a particular thing, like, oh, this star was discovered, or blah blah blah, or oh yeah, we launched this rocket, here it is. But that's it. Whereas on YouTube, there may be a longer format where you learn something about it, and there's more detailed information, and that is absolutely not possible to be present on TikTok. And so I think if you use that all the time, it kind of conditions your brain to only accept condensed things, where like you over time, like longer stuff, you get impatient, right?
I wonder if the culprit here is children's programming. Because like in our childhood, we had things like serialized cartoons where they would have like scores of episodes with a full story in each one, with no more than a minute and a half of commercials at a given time. And so it was very much like attention holding and story building. Like they'd sprinkle in morals and you know, objectives for learning. We had Reading Rainbow, Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, things like that. Then all of a sudden, the generation after ours gets all this weird Nickelodeon shit that is like random gross stuff,
like Blue's Clues and
that's even later. I mean, like
the
whole
Ren and Stimpy.
The dude with the funny blonde hair, I can't even remember. Drawn like crap.
Yeah.
You know, like all of it is starts getting geared more and more towards this ADD style. Like I almost wonder if we're building ADD children, basically,
like making it like it's not something that just happens. We're actually making it happen by the way we raise our children through what their experiences are. I think that's a very definite possibility, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, what else is TikTok other than like ADD fodder?
Yeah, well, and kids programming too. It's very rapid fire, just one thing happening after another, and no time to think, time to breathe. Because in our era, like when I was growing up in the 80s cartoons, they had some of them were very slow burn, right? It took time. They were developing a story, and there were times where there were rests, essentially. And movies also were that way. There lots of movies would take their time crafting a story. And now, like Star Trek, for instance, right? That's a good example. The Star Trek movies, back in the early days, so the TOS and TNG ones, they were very much like an episode of TNG, essentially. Like there was a lot of, it took its time to get there. Whereas you look at the Star Trek, what was it, 2009 or whatever, the one just called Star Trek. It didn't stop for a moment. It was
Right.
like the people that you know who can't stop talking and just go from one thing after another constantly, and like, it's kind of like that. It's like it's just assailing you with scene after scene and explosions and oh, geez, and, oh, this thing happening. Like there's not even really a story. It's just a bunch of shit happening back to back.
I just watched that most recent Indiana Jones, the supposed last one. You know, we'll see. And I lost count of how many car chases there were. I was like, oh, another car chase. Yeah, okay, all right. That's not really what I expect from Indiana Jones, but especially like an Indiana Jones in his 80s.
Yeah.
Like, why is he in a car chase? Really?
Yeah. Well, a good example of a new movie that didn't do that was Blade Runner 2049. That one, it was took its time. Slowly, there were a lot of long shots that wasn't a huge amount of dialogue, not a ton of action happening. And you contrast that with that Star Trek movie. Yeah, like it seriously, I think we saw that in the theater. You, me, and Joe, right?
Did we?
I think we did. Like I walked away from that movie and I'm like, what even happened? It's kind of like what I thinking back, it's like I don't even remember any of it. Like what? Okay, I remember like they jumped off of this one thing, and then there was a fight scene, and I don't know.
I remember they liked to cram as much fan service in as they could, and they took all the characters that we knew right out of the academy, threw them on this ship together, and then Khan was there all of a sudden, like a year later.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Oh yeah. It's
like not just Khan from TOS, but like Wrath of Khan got redone.
Yeah.
Like, why are you? Like,
well, and it did things that weren't even consistent with Star Trek before. Like I do remember there was a scene where Kirk and Spock were like yelling at each other, and Kirk like punches Spock or something like that. Like that would never happen.
Spock trying to get laid.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, now the casting was very, very well done on that show. But that's the only thing that was good about that movie.
Yeah.
And the story, there really wasn't one.
Except I mean, kitchen sink rests his soul, except Anton Yelchin. Like, he looked nothing like Chekhov from their TOS. Everybody else, they looked almost like they could be that person. Right?
Yeah, like a younger version.
Curly blonde hair. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Throw a wig on him.
I know, yeah. Or cast someone else, you know?
Yeah.
Oh man.
No, he was a good Chekhov. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
it didn't look like it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think that this, like the difference between the different generations of movies, and I'm just didn't want to sound like I'm just picking on Star Trek, because it's present everywhere, all over the place nowadays. Movies cannot take their time. They've got to be going from thing to thing to thing to thing, so you just don't even have time to stop. And maybe that's a product of the stuff that's happening aside from movies within society, where like the TikTok generation and stuff, where people can't function. They get impatient if something takes longer than just a few minutes.
Yeah.
And it's got to be like a new thing, one thing, then another, then another, then another, then another. Like, you can't just sit there and say, listen to somebody talk about a particular subject for 15 minutes. Like a lot of the science and astronomy shows that I like, they do stuff that's maybe about that length, and it's just somebody taking their time talking about things, and that's really entertaining to me, but maybe it's not to a lot of other people.
Let's pause for a moment and run a quick test on attention spans. If you're still watching this video this long into it, comment right now, I'm Generation KSN.
Yeah. Yep.
I bet no one will.
Probably not. No.
And that's sad. Like when you look at our analytics, like, and I'm sure this is true for 99% of everyone on YouTube. Like, it's such a steep drop. You know, like no matter how long your video is, the amount of people sticking it out for a few minutes is really low. Like, really, really low.
Yeah. Well, and that's really interesting because there's almost like an opposite side of that where game streaming channels. I watch a lot of video, like people playing video games. People will sit for hours and hours and hours watching somebody stream, like people playing a video game, which is really interesting. So why is it that like kids, youth, say teenagers and stuff, can sit there for 4 hours watching somebody play through a video game, but they can't sit for like 3 minutes
because it's still a video game, you know?
That's true.
Like, yeah. I even sit and watch my stepdaughter play a Zelda game, you know, because that's one player, so all you can do is, you know, sit there and watch, and you know, like at least there's like kind of a story to follow and a puzzle to solve and blah 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 and stuff like that. Like it can still be like engaging. So like I never understood it before, but I kind of see like watching video games as a thing now. But it depends on the game. Like if it's just a shooter, I would be bored shitless.
Well, it depends on the game and it depends on who's playing it. Because like there's a few people that I watch because I like their personality, because they don't just, you're not just watching the game being played, you're hearing them talk about what's going on and reacting to what's happening or maybe even seeing them. Some people superimpose their head or something there, their torso basically, like while they're playing the game. And of course, maybe another factor is that during live streams you have the chat going on, so that keeps people engaged because there's constant posts and stuff like that and replies, and there's a lot of action going on. So even if nothing's really happening too exciting in the game, the chat may be pretty thrilling. Maybe that's why that works. But an interesting thing I noticed too, like during the summer, I went camping with a girlfriend, and across from us at another campsite, a bunch of these teenagers showed up. And interesting thing, like, so they played music. Like, you remember back when we'd play music and you just you put on like your stack of MP3s or your tape or whatever and listen to, say, an album or a mixtape or whatever. Well, so it's like they played music and it was really loud, but they'd only play like the first 30 seconds of a song and then go to the next song. And only play 30 seconds of it, go to the next song. Only 30 seconds of it, and go to the next song. And it's like, what? You can't even wait to hear the whole song? Why are you even listening to music then? That's
right.
What is that all about? And it was a big group of kids too. It was like, you know, like 10 people or something like that there. And you'd think that somebody would go, hey, I want to hear the rest of that song. No, they were totally fine with it. Just skip on to the next one.
Well, for those people, there are some Altair songs that are under 2 minutes. So,
yeah, there you go.
Check those out. But that said, it makes me sad because they're pretty much all unfinished songs. Like the whole experience of a song involves kind of like a journey. Like just like there's not much you can say in a 15-second video. There's not much you can say in 30 seconds of a song. Really not much.
True.
Yeah, I mean, like, unless you're like spitting lyrics super fast and you get your story out, but then it's like dull, you know, like what was that? Like,
so yeah. Well, some songs could be good for, say, like incidental music and background stuff, video game tracks or something that would work really well for that. You just loop this short song over and over again. But yeah, I mean, the song it's a story. All songs are stories. There's certainly the person that wrote the song had a thought, and they wanted to get it across either through lyrics, vocals, or just the music itself, the tone of the music, which you definitely can. There's a lot of people who are like, I don't understand a song unless it has words. And I think, well, you just listen to it. You can hear the emotion. You can hear something going on. It's telling a tale.
Yeah. I think the great philosophers, the Doobie Brothers, said, whoa, listen to the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in fact, that's the thing too. You can get across certain things through just music that you could never get across through words of any sort.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. And I bet you anything that this generation, teenagers and stuff like that, they probably couldn't handle listening to songs that don't have lyrics.
Huh. I wonder if, like, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, is try, like, having a constant backing score to our episodes. Like, we've got more than enough songs where we could link together songs to just like go from one to the other throughout the length of an episode.
Well, I have a lot of songs. I think you have a few too that are more ambient.
Yes, yeah.
Like Celeste or Galactic Core, stuff like that doesn't have a lot of punch to it.
But even the stuff that, even without lyrics, like you and I both have stuff that does have punch to it also, it could also, vibe with the conversation.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that would be more engaging for people.
It might be.
Just like something to keep you watching and waiting for the next little hook. Because I noticed that, like, in that episode where your video didn't work, and I went and gumped in like 3 minutes of you looped over and over again, gesticulating, and it was like super fun to wait for where you magically lined up with what you were talking about. Like, something like that might kind of work also with the music.
Just like a really low volume.
Yeah, like a negative 12 decibel is kind of a sweet spot, I think. Yeah, like that would be a fun experiment to see what that does to the algorithm, to the viewership statistics.
Well, I'm sure if we did take one of those songs that's kind of background-ish and loop it a few times, kind of just have it play a few times, and then kind of fade into a different song that does the same thing a few times. So it's like throughout the episode, there might only be like 3 songs that are played. But they're that'd be kind of cool. Well, we could try it. I don't know. I'm sure there won't be anybody commenting about that, but if you're still here, comment about that. You want to hear that? Yeah. I think
Come on, Generation KSMers.
Yeah, exactly.
Give us your comments.
Oh yeah.
So we need a T-shirt, Gen KSM.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could probably just say Gen K, because I don't think that's even a thing. Shorten it.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a long time before they get back around on the alphabet.
Yeah, we'll be long gone unless we extend our life.
Copyright it.
Yeah.
Copyright with a K.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, well, I think that's we've covered about as much as we can for this episode.
Yeah,
definitely a lot of good stuff there.
Definitely. Well,
speaking of music,
give us your thoughts, Gen K.
Speaking of music, there's something queuing up right now, so enjoy that.
You probably have had a girlfriend in Gen K, haven't you?
Maybe.
It's been a lot of
gens. Yeah, I'd have to think. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, while Eric thinks about that, let's cue up the song.